Greetings. This is Robert Forsch with the YouTube channel Truth. And are you ready for the purge, for the AI Terminator Matrix, end of normal life, whatever that may be? What will you do when the power goes out, when you don't have electricity? When it's in the 70s out and it's windy, no big deal. How about when it's well below freezing? We live in a world that relies heavily on electricity, and climate control is a big thing. We can survive through hurricanes in that pretty well if our habitat isn't damaged, ruptured. As you've maybe looked at some of the devastation of the Bahamas, or some of the massive events that have taken place in human history, where there's been a tremendous loss of life, mudslides, wildfires, as in California. Another wildfire evidently took place recently. There's so many of them, it's hard to keep track of it all. So what I wanted to do with the critical analysis of some of the devastation is what will you do? How will you respond when the lights go out where you are? And what kind of practical steps can you take for that event when that takes place? So, like in the added to my my titles that I put out there, I also have my liked video playlist attached to it. There's 2,971 videos there that you can check out if you care to, and there's a psychiatric perspective that deals with how would we say, confirmation bias. People will see something and then say, oh, there's nothing there for me. I just went through an intersection where the lights are out, no electricity at that signal. That could get really weird. Yeah, it could get fatal. Right now I'm headed over where I drove by, and there was a fatality in the road a few months ago. A pedestrian was hit. And, they don't need to prep. They don't need to worry about any of this. A lot of the people in the Bahamas don't need to concern themselves with anything in this realm anymore because they've transitioned. Roughly 7 people per second transition out of this world as we know it. What's the truth about that? How does that happen for them? So, I'm not endeavoring to survive the apocalypse, so to speak. One of the reasons why I'll hashtag AI Terminator Matrix, just imagine, if you will, a concept of seeing is believing. What do we see and what do we believe? One of the things that happened, even though we had a power outage where we were, I did have access limited to the internet. For a while, I was able to use my iPhone 10 linked to cell communications and use my phone as a hotspot for my computer, which worked nice for a while. And then, because of how vast of a power outage there was, the data stream was overwhelmed, and I lost that privilege, that access. However, I was able to go live both on Facebook and on YouTube, just to let people that care know I'm okay. There's a lot of people that not only don't care, there's a hatred for me and a hatred for the God whose I am. I'm one of his children, and there are people that it's a weird kind of thing. They view themselves as an atheist, but are really upset that anyone would proclaim that there's an absolute truth and a creator, and that we live in a creation. Oh well. People will believe what they want to believe largely. That's confirmation bias. And then there's kind of like a sorting process where they, including me, will search through to try and find what I believe the truth to be about something. So I was going to go to Area 51. I've been going there for years. I've driven through that area. I decided to just go there digitally with my liked video playlist. And one of the reasons why I did that, I sent that playlist to the event promoters because I wanted to make them aware of what I believe the truth about aliens to be. There's an interdimensional aspect of what are viewed to be unidentified flying objects. Right here in the Cherry Grove area, I've talked with law enforcement that are friends of mine that talked about them seeing unidentified flying objects come right out of the ocean and fly around and go back into the water. What in the heck was that? I pay attention. I've been paying attention for a long time. Right now I'm going over the Intracoastal Waterway, and I'm taking us on into the Prince Pier area of Cherry Grove, where I do a lot of recording. I'm going to drive around there a little bit and see what it looks like. I might not even be able to get in. I'm not sure. It depends. But back to the aliens or unidentified flying objects, one of the things that occurs is that they're viewed on radar, and they're viewed optically with people out there looking at them and recording them and showing them. And when something goes from 0 to 9,000 miles an hour and then out of our visibility, that's not humanly impossible to endure that kind of pull. They've got this blocked off right here, that direction. I'm gonna go this way. I saw a car go by, so it's obviously open. They just don't want to make it real easy. So seeing is believing. What do we see and what do we believe about it? So one of the dynamics that I mentioned with my interactivity with the internet and being limited was that I was able to watch some storm coverage. We were only without power for, like about 10 hours. But that was our household electrical connection to the grid. I had an inverter connected to a deep cycle battery and charging it with my car to run our freezer and refrigerator and charge all our devices, including a computer and that. So the idea with that is there's ways to improvise. We weren't without power. It was just very limited. So when we had 110 below wind chill in the Midwest this past winter, we're coming up on another winter. Could there be some kind of a purge? What happens if artificial intelligence shuts down the power generation or distribution in an area that has that kind of brutal temperature? Well, most houses now with high efficiency furnaces need electricity to heat. Even those that have like a pellet stove need electricity to operate that. I wanted to give some practical prepping steps that you may want to consider. I've got a lot of plants inside the house, lots and lots, like over 30 plants that have, they generate a lot of oxygen. so I can have a little propane cooker, like a turkey cooker, to actually heat up water that I can pour through and make coffee if I want, take a bath if I want. And so, like, even for me, I skipped a day bathing. Well, one of the things that happens is I require quite a bit of electricity to heat up the water to bathe in. And I'm bathing in the highly purified drinking water because I don't want the chlorine and prescription drugs that are in the water supply. And we don't know exactly all the chemicals that are in the water. Admittedly, fluoride is in the water, which is extremely toxic. So this broadcast is going to be less than 4 hours. That's all that Facebook will allow me to go. This device right here can jumpstart a diesel truck. I've done it. Pulled up to a guy with his hood up. It was a construction crew. They had a big trailer, big diesel truck with the hood up. I was on the motorcycle. I said, "Hey, do you need a jump start?" He says, "Yeah, I called somebody and they're on their way." I said, "Well, I can get you started right now if you want." He looked at me kind of funny, and I said, "Yeah, I've got a jump pack on my cycle here." So I fired it up for him. Looks can be deceiving. Okay, so right here we've got a lot of marsh grass that's on the road. That means that the coastal preserve filled up sufficiently to cause the grass that would normally be down low here to go up over the sidewalk and through the parking lot and all that. Anyway, the reason this broadcast will be less than 4 hours, that's all that Facebook will allow a live broadcast to go. The reason why I mention that too is that you can, if you want, if a lot of people that subscribe to my channel don't even have any content on their channel. A lot of my haters don't have any content on. I subscribe to them when they're hating on me on some of the threads I do comment on. What you can do if you want is virtually anybody can go live on Facebook right now. And I've got videos that cover how that can possibly change. There's a clamping down of a social rating, like if you're out of favor with the system, you might not have that privilege. I'm going to bounce around to a few topics as per usual. One of the things too is that, like, when I signed up for library, that blockchain technology to archive my YouTube videos that were Facebook videos as well, some of them, I had to prove that I was a human being. I had to prove my humanness. We live in a world right now where there's a lot of artificial intelligence, and a lot of the trading on the stock market and information that's generated can be a column that's written by an entity. It may be a chat bot. It may not even be a person that does that. Okay, so one of the reasons I'm going to go back to seeing is believing. What do we see and what do we believe about it? Looks like we've got another law enforcement vehicle coming this way. That's good. I'm glad we're really policed up. The tide is low right now. Seeing is believing. So one of the things that happened is, because I was able to watch some of the storm coverage, and they showed the what they called satellite imagery, satellite/radar imagery. It's like a composite. For those of us that are awake to a lot of the deception that's going on, we know that a lot of what we're told isn't actually real. So to look at a computer model, this is the projected course of the storm, and they show the projected course of Hurricane Dorian, or whatever the hurricane may be next time, but they'll show the projected path that it's going to follow, and it looks just like what we saw earlier. So my point is, how do we know what's real? Now, we know that the Bahamas really got hammered by a storm, and it leveled most of it, which is tragic for those individuals, which is one of the dynamics that's kind of disconcerting, is to take a look around and see what God allows. We're not a celestial sneeze, a godless cosmic Big Bang. This is real, and it is a creation that has a lot of human tragedy that takes place. And so, even though God is sovereign, meaning He's in charge and in control, He allows a lot of very uncomfortable and human tragedy to go on. I mean, when we were anticipating what might happen to us here, we could see what happened in the Bahamas. That could have happened here too. Hurricane Andrew devastated Florida. Many of you are aware of that. As I'm driving along here, it's really not much of a big deal. We had like 50-mile-an-hour gusts of 55 or so mile-an-hour winds that occurred here. For Hurricane Florence, we had approaching 100-mile-an-hour winds, and a lot of the water went inland from here, which flooded us out later. We had a lot of flooding later. I'm not actually going to go out on the beach right now. Not here. Not at this location. I'm going to take us over to the Cherry Grove up here. I just wanted to see what it looks like here. So they've got the gate open here, and I'm just going to take a walk out, see what I can show you right here. So, like I mentioned, from time to time, if you'd like stickers like that, you can send a self-addressed stamped envelope to 169 Cloverleaf Drive, Longs, South Carolina, 29568. About a decade ago, none of this was here. It was water right up to the edge. And storms like we just had washed up a lot of sand. That's what had occurred here. So the storm systems can move around a tremendous amount of sand with the water, of course. So with critical analysis, what we can prepare for depends on what resources are available to us. If you wanted to have a structure that could handle 250 mile-an-hour winds, steel reinforced concrete insulated panel, shotcreted, would be a good way to go for that. I went to a factory that manufactured the panel, and that's what AT&T used for their cellular stations that would have their switching and that for their cell towers. And it takes about 70% less energy to climate control that. And you could actually make a little safe room or a panic room in your house if you wanted to. You just use a trowel and put that the shotcrete or the like 9,000 psi concrete on the panel if you wanted to. We don't know what kind of devastating winds we're going to end up seeing with some of the storms that can be created and or modified and manipulated. So one of the hashtags I've put out is weather wars. There's weather modification. My wife Joni was talking to one of her friends. They both think I'm a crazy guy, and I said, well, did you know that there's actually patented weather modification that you can see on my channel? It's out in the open if you want to look at it. They just think it's the craziest thing that I would even think that that's real. I said, well, you can see it just if you want to look at it. And they would prefer to think me a crazy person, so they don't even need to consider any of that. And that's largely what we interact with individuals that are presented information, and they just would prefer to believe whatever they want to believe, apparently. And one of the reasons why I bring it up, the family issue, spouse issue, is because that's pretty common. It's unusual for both the husband and the wife, and then if you take the extended family to say, oh, I get it, there's a mass deception that's being perpetrated on humanity, or we get it. It doesn't typically work that way. And that's a bit of a challenge, because what we're left with is, does what we believe really match what we say, and so forth. So yeah, with me it does. I mean, I really believe what I'm telling you to be true. I've got evidence that I've compiled on my channel to back up what I'm saying. If somebody wants to just watch a couple minutes of me talking like this and say, yep, crazy flat earther, nothing there for me. Oh, really? Okay. Move along. All I needed to be told was that we don't live on a globe, that the globe is a lie. I looked into it for a very short time. Within a few hours, I realized that I had bought one of the biggest deceptions ever perpetrated on humanity, and it isn't because I was so bright or smart. What happened was, about a year and a half before that, I was actually born again, given God's Holy Spirit and a desire to know the truth more than anything else, no matter where it leads. So that's what happened with me. It was also an aspect of spiritual discernment, the creator of this world helping me to realize that there's a massive amount of deception going on. So with that in mind, what I wanted to do is say, there will be all kinds of information on my liked videos for somebody to look at and say, yep, that's a crazy person, tinfoil hat wearing, conspiracy theorist. Thing with tinfoil is it's conductive. I remember having actually tinfoil on our rabbit ears of our black and white TV to watch the fake moon landing. I remember right where I was when I saw it. And that was the same year I realized that the Santa lie. Oh yeah, I'm gonna take us on out, see what that looks like. Now the Prince Resort was nice enough to let people park here in the parking ramp. The only stipulation was that they needed to sign off on a waiver waiving their liability. So like second and third floor, 30, 40 feet up in the air would be great to stop the water infiltration. It doesn't take much to kill a car. If you're going through a big puddle and the engine cuts off, the salt water will go right in the engine and kill the car. A lot of people don't know that. It's not just that your car shuts off, it'll actually just totally wreck it. People coming to get their vehicles. There were a lot of golf carts parked up there. So it's going to be a bit windy out here, obviously. I'll do what I can to try and mitigate some of that. Good morning. So right now this is probably 25 to 30 mile an hour winds. And it's actually a pretty nice temperature. It's like low 70s. So stepping right here, there's just a little windbreak. Even having shrubberies around your house can make a big difference for protection. There's Steve. He's the manager of the pier right there. Checking out the damage. Looks like they're bringing the plywood down now. So yeah, we obviously had a lot of water come up here. Low tide this morning's at 8:37. And this is a south-facing pier, south-facing beach. And the state line is a couple miles in that direction. So they had a mandatory coastal area evacuation, and yet a lot of people will stay. And it was no big deal this time. But if we had a huge amount of water, like a big tsunami, it would just wash structures like that into the road, and people could be kind of like, they could walk out, but you just can't drive a car down roads that have houses on them and that. You can see evidence of a wash over here. can see that the pool has a good amount of sand in it. Yeah, the pier is closed right now, evidently. And that's the Myrtle Beach skyline there. That's a pretty serious chunk of wood from underneath the pier. At least that's what it looks like. So yeah, when the storm blows by, it's actually supposed to be pretty nice out here today. Looks like it will be. But they had, all the guests here had to leave. Good morning, Sally. Good. How did you do through the storm? Is your home okay? Oh, okay. Well, hopefully it's all okay. Yeah, we were fine where we were. Thanks for asking. So Sally needed to evacuate where she was. She had a mobile home about 1.5 miles in from the ocean. Definitely, they've got it all secured down good, but we'll see how it did when she's able to go in and check it out. She said there was a lot of flooding on the roads. So the water is a killer. That's what they talk about on the Weather Channel, and that's definitely true. That's just the way it is. The wind, even though we had the storm offshore, there was a lot of water that stacked up, and that's my friend Lee. He owns one of the major car dealerships in the area. What they are obviously doing is shuttling vehicles out of here now. That was nice that they allowed that. So I wanted to go ahead and talk about some more prepping and critical analysis of what just happened. So any of the storm systems that we have now, because there's a lot of weather modification actually taking place, to say that we've just got a natural storm is, I don't even believe, possible anymore at this point in human history. And once the lights go out, that's a big deal. What will you do? You know, so they can talk about the miles per hour of the storm and the storm surge and all that. Once the lights go out, it really is a major thing. How will you do what you do? So like for us, the inverter that I had to keep our food cool and protected, frozen, that worked out great. Joni said, can I dry my hair? I said, well, if that's the only thing we did with the power for a little while, we could, but that's not a priority. So, to have only 2,000 watts of power to use, it's good to have a really energy efficient chest freezer. The one that we have is supposedly, it's a Hisense that we got from Costco. The projected energy use annually is only $27 for a year. So for example, my inverter ran that without any problem. And our refrigerator as well, which takes like 4 times more energy to operate that. So if we had a power outage for an extended period of time, I would have just taken the food from there and put it into the freezer. But it gets kind of complicated because you don't want some things frozen. You just want them cold. Anyway, so having some redundancy. See, I can use this right now to keep my phone charging, which it is, as I do the broadcast. And I've got another battery that I'm charging. I can't charge it and use it to power at the same time. It just doesn't work. What they did here, looks like they brought a couple buckets of sand in to protect the beach from the water from flooding Main Street here. We actually did pretty good in this area. There wasn't nearly the damaging storm surge that could have happened. And because we didn't get as much rain come inland, we didn't have the problem that we did last year. Last year with Hurricane Florence, we had like almost 2.5 to 3 feet of rain go inland. And what that did is it overflowed the Waccamaw River. I've got video where I showed that, photos of it in that, and it was coming up in our neighborhood is the way that ended up working out. We're almost like on a little bit of an island in our subdivision. There's swampland all around us. A lot of buildings boarded up here in that, rather safe than sorry. You can't, once you get high winds, boarding up buildings isn't even practical. I mean, people will still do it when it's pretty windy, but it's hard to handle pieces of plywood when there's high wind. So with a critical analysis of what, I'm going to go back to what we were shown as far as computer modeling in that, and what took place in the storm, like at the Bahamas. We saw a lot of flooding, a lot of structural damage, and so there was definitely a lot of wind and water that occurred there. How that all occurred is, I'm going to say it's still, there's some mystery with it. We don't know for sure what potential effects were caused by weather modification that is available in the world today. And the artificial intelligence doesn't actually need a person to say, yeah, let's go ahead and do this or that. It can just do what it basically wants underneath the sovereign control of God, whatever God allows. So that's something that's really important to consider. Here we obviously had a lot of flooding over the road, a lot of mud on the road. So rather than venture out in it yesterday, I just stayed home. Made a lot of sense to me. because to try and go through an area like that and have the car die, it just doesn't make any sense. So I decided to just stay at home and babysit our patched together electrical system. I didn't want to lose hundreds of dollars of food. So when the power went back on, it went off at a little bit before 5 o'clock in the morning, and there were some tornadoes locally here within a couple of miles from our house. And a tornado, you know, there can be winds that are in excess of a few hundred miles an hour. An F4, F5, I don't really know the category, if they were able to estimate the wind speeds of those. But there's areas in the country called Hurricane Alley and all kinds of activity where there's high winds and massive destruction. So to digress back to storm-proof building systems, there's technology that, like I mentioned, the steel reinforced insulated shotcrete concrete panel construction. It's a mouthful, but it's very energy efficient and can withstand earthquakes, wildfires, hurricanes, tornadoes. Why aren't we building like that? The system doesn't want it. It would rather be able to flatten it. If you look at the commercial construction, it's more like that. Some variable or variance of it, but a lot of concrete construction is what major, like the Prince Resort, a lot of concrete there. They don't have to worry about the building blowing away. It's not going to happen. Not with a couple 100-mile-an-hour winds. However, apparently, according to the heliocentric model, we're spinning over 1,038 miles an hour. How could we have divergent wind directions if that were the case? So, critical analysis of information that we're presented and how do we process that? So, like if somebody were to come up to me and say, hey, we found out that Santa Claus really does deliver the presents in an evening with flying reindeer, I'd say, I'm not buying that. That's not happening. We know that's not happening. It's as ridiculous as that, the globe. And early on in this, I was pretty disappointed to see that what's wearing the name of the Christian community, or the Bible Belt, they say they believe the Bible. They don't, in many cases, don't even know what it says, except for a few hand-picked, cherry-picked verses. Oh well, I'm not in control of what other people think, say, believe, or do. I'll just do my best to share what I believe the truth to be, and I do that on my channel, on my Facebook. So it looks pretty clear around here. Not much destruction here. Nothing like happened in the Bahamas, and Charleston had a lot of flooding. These are a lot of contractors, like the big truck that just pulled out, power company trucks, tree service trucks. So one of the things that I do is I make my phone number available. You could call me anytime. It's 1-843-504-1776. And I know it's going to be in reverse. That's just the marker to let you know I told you with the audio of that. There's redundant systems that people can put in place if you want to have a bit of preparation. For Y2K, we had a barn filled with firewood, oak that I cut and split. About 80 face cords of hardwood. I would put in a 55-hour work week at the Rawhide Boys Ranch, and then in addition to that, for Y2K, preparation. I chopped firewood, got a generator, extra fuel tanks. I would put in, like about 7 additional hours a day chopping firewood for a year and a half. All the preparation. We had young children at the time, and I was like 40 years old when that was going on. So we had a lot of preparation. Tree down I had to avoid. We had a lot of preparation that we did to anticipate a potential power interruption, which is part of what I'm talking about right now. When the power went back on for us yesterday, even though I had frozen broccoli, spinach, and berries and bananas and all that, as soon as the power went back on, there was, the storm was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I liquefied 5 more gallons of that spinach, kale, chia seed, hemp hearts, broccoli, apple cider vinegar, mixed berries, bananas, and then put it in the freezer. I already had 5 gallons in there. Now there's like a total of 10 gallons. It tastes great, and it's highly nutritious. There's food that will fill a void in the stomach. It just doesn't have a lot of nutritional value. That's one of the problems in our society, is that people want to fill the void in their life with something that really doesn't provide actual good, healthy nutrition. I'm talking beyond just our physiology. It's our food for our soul, food for thought. So when I say food for thought, I just don't mean one of my ponderings on life. I mean, good, healthy nutrition helps good thinking. The digestive tract, the gastrointestinal tract needs to be clear of candida, yeast, which is, I believe, cancer causing. Cancer is a fungus. It's a parasite that will have rapid cell growth that'll kill its host. That's what it is. There's a doctor from Italy that injected cancerous tumors with baking soda and killed them. My mother died in 1993 on September 28th, and shortly before that, she said, Bobby, if the cancer doesn't get you, the treatment will. She was right. A lot of the women running with their pink hats on and running for a cancer cure are unaware that their fundraising efforts largely are going towards a medical industrial complex that's going to provide toxic treatment for the toxic food additives that cause the toxic response in the body. Cancer isn't an accident. It's not a mystery for much of the system of control. And it's beyond just causing the cancer. It's causing a toxic cure and a perception that people need to stay in line to keep their benefits package in their company. What if they get cancer? Law enforcement coming right behind me. No worries, I'm going the speed limit. Everything is all licensed, insured, working the way it's supposed to. That's part of the thing, is when I live my life in a way that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, I don't have to worry about what happens to me. Not concerned that God is going to punish me because I'm doing what I'm supposed to. In fact, a lot of the punishment is self-induced. Somebody that's talking about the ill of chemtrails and smoking cigars and cigarettes, oh well, that's something you should have control over. And if you don't, then there might be a problem. I used to smoke cigars and cigarettes and drink alcohol and smoke marijuana, and all of those toxins. If you're thinking marijuana is God's plant for God's people, well, who knows what's in it, right? Do you really know? The THC CBD ratio. I was trying to grow my own climate controlled marijuana grow room in our attic. I don't need that anymore. I never did. What I actually needed was to be born again, which has happened. So I'm not saying there's in medicinal benefits for hemp, absolutely. I have hemp seed almost every day. So that's part of the healthy benefits that we can have, that we integrate into our life. I did some of the stupidest stuff while I was stoned on marijuana, just so you know. It wasn't my best thinking. I couldn't see it while I was getting high, while I was chasing after that, perpetually chasing after that high. I'm free from that enslavement. I would have been muzzled from doing what I'm doing now. I wouldn't be talking about the government corruption if I was riding dirty all over the place. Are you kidding? Yeah, it just wouldn't be happening. So that's part of the reason why I talk about what I do, is that it's a freedom that I have, that I enjoy, and I want to hand that invitation out to others to enjoy a life of walking with God, of actually investigating the promises of Scripture, the historical account of the Bible, and how it matches up with what we see, including the Noah's Ark and the mountains of Ararat that Ron Wyatt discovered. I've got it on my liked video playlist. So this information is publicly available. There's a lot of haters out there. What it may even appear to be like friendly fire within the community of faith. People believe a lot of things. Is it true? That would be the question that I would have for you. Is, as you critically analyze information, is it true? Is it real? Truth and reality, I believe, are interchangeable. Garbage in, garbage out. A lot of people know what computer hardware is, software. Wetware is something that a lot of people are unaware of what it is. It's actually us, from the AI perspective, from the artificial intelligence, reaching into supposedly the past and the future and all of that with computer programming humanity. It's pretty elaborate. I've got documentaries that cover artificial intelligence. A lot of people don't know. Not only do they not know what's coming, they don't know what's going on now. And I don't claim to know it all. I just know a lot of it. You know, because I brew my coffee ahead of time, and I put it in a thermos like this, I can have it whenever I want. So even when we had a power outage, I was fine. I just took a big gulp of my coffee and went ahead and got my system going to make more of it. There's ways that we can deal with the circumstances of life. My wind chime, that should be a reminder of the impossibility of the globe. There's not a group of upside down people. Water exposes the global lie. Is a washing machine an anti-gravity device? when it hits the spin cycle and the water flies off, and then we put our clothes in a dryer to create a temperature differential and send the humidity outside. Take a look at what your life would be like without electricity, and imagine how will you take care of that. One of the last things I would want to do is fire up a generator and have all the lights on in the house when it's black everywhere around. I had let me show you a little something I've got here. Let's see, where is it? It's a headlight. Maybe you've seen them, but I wanted to show you because it's kind of interesting. An umbrella is a nice thing to have, but in high winds it doesn't work real good. This is a magnetic flashlight. It'll stick on the side of metal, and it charges up really good with a USB charger, and it can power stuff up. Those are just some practical steps. A lot of clean clothes when a storm's approaching. It's kind of nice. Oh, here it is, I think. It's all my raincoats and stuff. Anyway, I've got, oh, here it is. I wanted to show you. Okay, so this right here is a headlight. It goes on top with the hat. But when the lights go out and I need my hands, it's nice to have that. They've got other ones you can wear. There's practical, redundant steps that we can have to deal with life a little bit longer. What would be the message that I would carry? Even if this house got leveled and I was wiped out, there's a digital me that's still up there. Much to the chagrin of my haters, and yet I do have people that are grateful for what I do, and I appreciate the encouragement of those friends and family. It's a nice Bluetooth speaker. I can listen to God's Word through my devices, and I do, even when I'm sleeping, because when I'm sleeping I can't be reading. And it is programming. I have people comment on my posts sometimes that say the Bible is programming too. Absolutely. I believe it's God's programming for God's children to know what has happened, what will happen, what it looks like if it has or hasn't happened. There was as I looked in the mirror and I saw a man that was struggling with things that I was supposed to be free from, that was my clue that there was a problem there. The flesh is very difficult to deal with. The flesh has an appetite for self-satisfaction, self-pleasure, self-effort, all of that. And to look at that and realize that's all I had was the flesh. Then God, who created this world, I know him as Jesus Christ, Yeshua, Yahweh, the Alpha and Omega, the great I am, the way, the truth, and the life. I know him as that, as all those. The living word, the living water. So there's a lot of references, and you're going to need to, if you care to weigh out how you're going to interact with who you believe the divine entity is. And there's people with a lot of different views. It's basically like a spiritual smorgasbord in humanity. How will you know the truth when it's right in front of you? I mean, the reality of the world around you, your interaction with it. How is your programming going? And so when I evaluated all that, I found out that I was putting toxic stuff in my eyes and ears, and my imagination was fantasy. A lot of what people are believing is a lie, and they don't know it. So I think I might have said it. I'll say it again. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 says to everybody forever They refuse to love the truth and so be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion. So it's beyond a satanic deception. It is compounded by what I believe is the impossibility of people ultimately believing the most important truth. It's just the way it is. So I believe it's only by God's grace that anybody can love and believe the truth, let alone find it. This is Robert Forsch with the YouTube channel Truth. I've got a lot of powerful content on my channel. You can explore it if you care to. One of my favorite playlists is the YouTube Truth playlist, which is an audio Bible merged with the beauty of creation. You can check that out if you like. It takes less than a day to hear the entire New Testament and 77 hours to hear the entire, at least what we're told from Genesis to Revelation. 66 books, one author. And I do believe that the Book of Enoch should be considered. It may very well be authoritative and inspired by God. I haven't found any contradiction that would cause me to think it shouldn't be in the Bible. So it's on my playlist too. You can listen to that if you like. Thank you so much.